Well, Big Ben signing a new contract, going to help the Steelers save $15 million against the cap this season. Would have cost them a league-high $41 million against the cap, but the team announcing a new deal today, which will pay him $14 million this season in what is likely going to be his final season with the Steelers and potentially final in the NFL as well. In a statement, Big Ben says, "I am grateful to be at this stage of my career and more than happy to adjust my contract in a way that best helps the team to address other players who are so vital to our success. I love this game and love to compete, and I believe in this team and my ability to deliver when called upon. It all starts with great preparation, and I am ready to go." So are we. Here on this football happy hour, I'm Chris Hassel, joined by Bryant McFadden, former Steeler, and Danny Kanell as we dive into four different teams' outlooks for the offseason, beginning with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Bryant, I'll let you lead us off because Big Ben has restructured his deal. Is this a good thing, in your opinion, for Steeler Nation?
No question, Chris. It's a good thing, and here's why. He was able to free up some cap space to address other positional needs. If Big Ben wasn't able to do this, or if he didn't come to terms in doing so to help the team, they would be in a very, very bad place when you look at the cap. But now being able to understand that, yes, he would like to play one more year, and for him to be able to play one more year and have some of the guys that he's accustomed to seeing in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform play with him, he needed to make some adjustments. He needed to compromise. So I'm happy to see Big Ben as an individual compromise to help the team, because they have some other players that definitely need to address their contract woes. Specifically speaking, Juju Smith-Schuster. And I saw Juju tweeted out, I think he put on social media, "Now we can talk." Basically saying to Pittsburgh, you guys were able to maneuver some things to free up some cap space. Now we can talk when it comes to addressing his contract. And I think Big Ben would love to have number 19 in uniform in the huddle with him one more year, especially when you look at how reliable Juju Smith-Schuster has been for Big Ben as a pass catcher.
Yeah, I agree with you, B-Mac. I think this is great news for the Pittsburgh Steelers and for their fan base. Look at how much quarterback movement we've seen around the NFL already this offseason, and we anticipate to see that much more coming up, in the next month. You know why all those teams are moving on? Because they're not happy with their quarterback, and maybe they can't answer the question, can we win a Super Bowl with our guy? Well, the Steelers know that answer. They had a really solid season last year, came up just short. But after a year where there were massive question marks with the surgery he had and missing all of 2019, I would say Ben Roethlisberger responded pretty impressively this past season with a really, a solid season showing that, hey, I can still throw it all over the yard. I can still make every throw necessary. And you're going to get consistent game-winning play from your quarterback. So you've got stability there. But I do think the restructuring gives the Steelers not only an opportunity to talk to Juju Smith-Schuster, but also to make a run at some players and say, hey, there's now a sense of urgency. We know, because this is essentially that one-year deal for Ben, where you're probably going to have to make a tougher decision next year. But for this season, you were so close. And I know it was ugly versus Cleveland, but you were so close. Why not give it one last go? Put the pieces of the puzzle around Ben Roethlisberger necessary to make one late run. And I think that's why Ben took the reduced salary too. I think he realizes this is his last hurrah, and so he's willing to take a reduction in pay in order to make that happen.
So if this is it, and both parties think that this is going to be the last year, even though Big Ben does have more years on that deal, those are kind of fake years built in to help them against the cap. Bryant, do you think that they should start immediately with this draft to try to get the next franchise quarterback behind Big Ben?
Yo, Chris, that's a tough question. And the reason why it's a tough question is because they just signed a few months ago Dwayne Haskins, the former first-round selection for the Washington Football Club. Now, we haven't really seen the consistency that we thought we would see from Dwayne, but potentially he could be a real good player, right? And you have Mason Rudolph, and Mason Rudolph has been there for quite some time. But I think I feel more optimistic in Dwayne Haskins potentially being able to take the baton from Big Ben when he's done with playing in the National Football League. So it depends on where the team is with Dwayne Haskins, because if they're comfortable, if they're confident that he could be the next quarterback to replace Big Ben, I don't see them drafting a quarterback high, especially in the first 2 rounds, to say the least. But if they're a bit unsure, I wouldn't be surprised to see them take a quarterback clearly in the 2nd or 3rd round. So it's a very, very difficult situation for Pittsburgh to be in, because the last film they saw on Dwayne Haskins was Dwayne throwing to the opposing team in a Washington Football Club uniform. It's not like they're able to go through the motions and have OTAs and have mini camps right before the draft to see exactly how he's looking in the Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, to say the least, on the practice field. So I think it's all about just studying Dwayne Haskins, talking to him, trying to get a good assessment on where he is as a quarterback to determine should they still address the quarterback position early in the draft. Because if they do draft a quarterback, guys, in the first 3 rounds, to say the least, one of those quarterbacks that I mentioned, Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins, probably won't be on the roster in the beginning of the season.
And even though this restructured deal is going to save Pittsburgh $15 million against the salary cap, they still don't have very much money to spend. And they do have a lot of team needs, Danny. Ryan Wilson put together the list for us. And the thing that jumps out, I think, to a lot of people is the running game. James Conner likely going to leave as a free agent. And they just did not get nearly enough from the running back position last season.
No, they really didn't. And really, it's been a void there since Le'Veon Bell. They weren't able to figure that out at the end of his tenure with the Steelers, and it got ugly. But they've really had a glaring issue at the running back position. And I think has been evidenced in their offensive numbers. They have relied a lot on their quarterbacks. And when Ben Roethlisberger gets hurt, it is an issue, to say the least. So I think that's something they're going to have to address. The offensive line is something they're going to have to address, with Marquise Pouncey retiring, probably moving on from Villanueva at tackle. So they've got issues along the offensive line as well. And then corner, they're probably going to have to add some depth there. And with Bud Dupree up after an injury, probably going to have to look at somebody who can come off the edge. So they've got some significant issues they're going to have to address here through free agency. And they're going to have to make some tough decisions on a player like James Conner, who means so much to the city of Pittsburgh because of his struggle with cancer and how he attended Pitt, went to college there, and the fans love him. That's going to be a tough call to make.
Pete Prisco put together the list of his top 100 free agents, and no team had more on that top 100 list than the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have 7. Bryant, headlined by, we talked about James Conner, but Bud Dupree and Juju Smith-Schuster. So, I mean, you don't have a lot of money, and you've got a lot of guys that are pretty important to your team that could be leaving town.
Oh, no question. I mean, you got to ball on the budget when it comes to acquiring new free agents, and you have to do the same thing when it comes to keeping your free agents in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. The top 2 guys on the list, they should be the most important, their top priority. Bud Dupree, unbelievable year last year before the injury. In 2020, played 11 games, he had 8 sacks, forced 2 fumbles. And you saw the difference that Bud Dupree made when he was in the lineup compared to when he was out with the injury. And then Juju Smith-Schuster, he didn't lead the team in receiving yards. He was 3rd, but he led them in receptions with 97, also 9 receiving touchdowns. And I just talked about Big Ben and being able to adjust his contracts to free up money for the team in other positional needs. You better believe Juju Smith-Schuster is the guy that he's probably, backing. He's being extremely vocal to the organization and trying to find a way to bring him back, because he means a lot to the entire offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So those are the top priority guys, in my opinion. You have to find a way. I don't know how they're going to do it, being able to maneuver some things financially to bring those 2 guys back, because they mean a lot to the entire team.
So, Danny, who are some free agents that they should be targeting? They're going to have to be looking at some bargain shopping or ways to move money around like they did today with Big Ben, but they still don't have a lot of money to spend.
Hey, Chris, my job is to come up with the perfect names. They have to figure out how to make them work, right? I mean, because we have the easy part. But I mentioned Marquise Pouncey retiring at center. I think that's a critical position. Alex Mack for the Falcons, one of the better options available. I don't know if they'll be able to afford him. We talked about Juju Smith-Schuster coming back. How about a tight end? Jared Cook, a veteran presence along at tight end to be a big target that could maybe supplement some of that pass game. The running back class this year, there are a lot of options here. James Conner, I mentioned him. I'd like to see them bring him back. Another guy I wouldn't mind seeing him bring back is Zach Banner, who provides some depth and has already got experience on the Steelers. You can move him over to Villanueva's old position at tackle. And then Kenyon Drake, probably swinging for the fences, a little bit too expensive. But James White, the running back for the Patriots, is a guy who really catches the ball out of the backfield nicely. And in today's NFL, when you're trying to find mismatches and utilize everybody in the pass game, the run game is pretty much forgotten about. You can have a versatile running back in James White, who you might be able to get at a reasonable rate coming off the Patriots. So some guys in here swing at the fences, probably not too realistic, but some on the cheaper side you may be able to land.
Well, they got a ball at a budget, so they got to go the cheap route. And I love some of the names you had on your list, Danny. I'm right there with you. You have to upgrade the center position. I think a cheaper player that could provide quality production for them, when you look at Corey Lindsey and Alex Mack, what their market could be is Austin Ryder. I think he could be a huge plus for their offensive line. The last 2 years, he started 28 games for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then Marlon Mack, tore his Achilles early in the season in 2020. But when he was healthy, the last time he was healthy, he ran for over 1,000 yards in 2019. And because of that injury, clearly you can get him at a team-friendly deal. And Jared Cook just improving the tight end position. Vance McDonald, he retired. Eric Ebron was a bit inconsistent. Jared Cook, he's like wine. He gets better with age, especially in the red zone. And if you would like to add another reliable pass catcher, especially in the red zone for your quarterback in Big Ben, I think Jared Cook would look real nice in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform.
All right, so early expectations for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who started 11-0 before they lost 4 of their last 5. Danny, what do you expect in 21?
Man, this division is tough, and I think it's only going to get tougher with some of the improvements other teams are going to make. But this news with Ben coming back and freeing up some cap space, I would expect them to compete for a division title again. Now, I think it's going to be interesting because I think other people will pick the Ravens or the Browns, the trendier teams in the division. I would probably lean that way too. I don't know if the Steelers are going to have enough. B-Max talking about balling on a budget. I don't know if I'm willing to say there, but I will think this is still a playoff team with the extra playoff spot. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I don't think you see that dramatic of a drop-off. So I think they're a playoff team. I just don't know if they're quite good enough to win the division in a very packed division.
Yeah, Danny, I'm right there with you. A very, very sticky division, and not knowing exactly what Cincinnati will look like with a healthy Joe Burrow. Who knows? But I think, realistically speaking, if they're able to adjust some things and make a few moves that we don't see happening right now, they clearly could compete for a divisional crown once again. I think the consensus would pick the Baltimore Ravens, and then I think a lot of people would pick the Cleveland Browns. I'm not quite ready to jump on the Cleveland Browns bandwagon just yet with the success they had last year, especially in the postseason. But I think they're going to be a competitive team once again. But Big Ben, if you can provide Big Ben a sound structure running game, I think that would help him. So I think right now, based on not knowing exactly what they would do throughout free agency and what they would do through the draft, I say best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers probably would be finishing second in the division. But even if you finish second, with the extra playoff spot, you still can get into the tournament. All
right, B-Mac, Danny, hold tight because we're going to talk about a team that you just mentioned. The Baltimore Ravens, the favorites to win the division going into next season, Lamar Jackson and company. All Things Covered podcast has you covered with B-Mac and Patrick Peterson. Interesting pod this past week. They had LaShawn McCoy on. Among other things, he talks about how many more years he thinks Tom Brady can play. And he makes his own little case for the Hall of Fame. LaShawn McCoy, that is. Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.